Well, the Jubilee celebrations are over, the platinum one, and I remember the silver one and the other celebrations that we've had. And back in 1953, when the coronation was there, I remember watching the coronation on a little black and white screen, and some neighbours came along in order to watch it, who didn't have a TV, because most people didn't have a TV in those days, and I rather suspect the world was a better place for it. And that was a long time ago. I'm an old geezer now. And I've been a monarchist all my life, as my father had been before me, and my grandfather, and so on and so forth, holders of the Queen's Commission. And I feel that this celebration, which has taken place across the country, especially in rural areas, and I live in a tiny village, and the bunting's out and street parties and so on and so forth, and that's all happened, and that's all rather charming, and I think it's a celebration of people's innate patriotism and their love of tradition, which I think is a healthy thing and a good thing. But we need to ponder, do we not? We need to ponder what comes next. Her Majesty may have a few years left, but we've got to look to the future, and we have to think what we're getting out of a constitutional monarchy, if indeed we're getting anything at all. In my little village this weekend, we had the Civil War Reenactment Society coming along and doing their stuff with their cannons and their pikes and bits and pieces, and marvellous it was. Very good to see it, and it puts us in mind, of course, of the civil war between the parliamentarians and the monarchists. And, of course, an idiot monarch in Charles I was eventually deposed, and parliamentarians took over, who were equally idiotic, it seemed, and we weren't really destined to be a republic. We are destined to be a constitutional monarchy, and that really, in all fairness, worked pretty jolly well for several hundred years. It's worked reasonably well, I think, but we tend, when we look at Her Majesty and we look at the royal family, so we tend to think of it all, do we not, in terms of pageantry, in terms of tradition. But we have to bear in mind that a constitutional monarchy, a constitutional monarch, is not just a cardboard cutout. She has a responsibility, and she has had a responsibility to the Constitution. And a number of times during her reign, sadly, largely due to appalling advice from her ministers over many administrations, going right back to the 1950s, she has abrogated some of her responsibilities to the Constitution. Well, that's blood under the bridge now. Let's just forget about that and look forward. We have a Prince of Wales who seems not to be very interested in the people, in the British people. He seems to be much more interested in his colleagues of the private jet fraternity and the World Economic Forum, and all the bigwigs and the Bilderbergers and all the people who really govern us, because this is the problem we've got. We are going to have a king, unless he changes, who needs to just think about the people over whom he reigns. That's the key, not his friends, his billionaire friends and celebrities, so on and so forth, and that really goes for the rest of the family. And I would say Her Majesty has been ill-served by a dysfunctional family, as well as very poor advice from her ministers over the years. Now, the British monarchy has survived and survived and survived over, over hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years, and with far worse royal houses than the Windsors. But the Windsors, let's be brutally frank, aren't very good, and they're going to need to shape up if they're going to stay as our royal family, and we're going to have a constitutional monarchy for the future. There's going to have to be some changes, and we must see the king associating, the future king associating with his subjects and not his chums behind closed doors. And he needs to broaden his advice, the people who give him advice. At the moment, he's very impressionable and susceptible to fake science. He's been telling us that the world's going to boil now for the last 25 years, and there's no such evidence of it. So he needs to broaden out a little bit. He needs to take advice, perhaps, and opinions from people who aren't sycophants and aren't fake scientists, of whom there are already far too many. He needs to make a stand, and the royal family the extended royal family need to take a little bit more attention to their responsibilities. And as a confirmed monarchist in the past, I actually make some of these remarks with heavy heart. It's a shame. And just to remind you, as I finish off with a constitutional monarchy, what we should be doing is voting for our members of parliament on a manifesto of what they want to do. And we vote for them. And they should carry out that manifesto, which they seem to take no notice of once they're in office. We have an amending chamber, the House of Lords, which was be drastically mucked about with by Tony Blair's reorganisation of it, an ascension of the laws by the monarch. Now, this has all fallen by the wayside, and of course we've had many years with the European Union as laws have been passed for this country with no cost-benefit analysis and no input from Parliament at all, which is quite illegal under our Constitution and illegal under the Coronation Oath. And I suggest, if you hadn't read the Coronation Oath, I suggest you do, because you'll see how glaringly wrong-headed it has been to go the path that we have in the past 40 years. We also have people coming to this country now. Millions of people are coming to this country who aren't coming into our country because they love our institutions or our way of life or the principles of English law or Britishness. They're coming to the country because we have a very generous welfare system. They have no love for us, many of these people, and we need to be extremely careful, and we need to start dealing with that seriously, and we haven't been in the past. All of this is on my website, my blogs and my articles beforehand. Before we are overwhelmed and we are pushed, as ancient Britons were, up into the corners of Wales by incomers, whether they be Saxons, Romans, Vikings, Danes, we are in danger. And there are already enclaves which are virtually cut off from mainstream Britain, and you all know where they are. Think about these things, because at the moment we're not represented by the people you think we're represented by. You look at the Prime Minister and you look at the Cabinet and you look at the opposition. There's nothing to do with the way that you are being governed. You are being governed by a secret cartel whose interests are not your interests. They are their own personal interests. Big business and money in the main. It was ever thus. So try and be a little bit more aware. Well, greetings to you. As you know, social media was a wonderful invention so that we could all communicate with each other and share our views, and share views that aren't necessarily in line with the establishment, the global establishment, which is run mainly by banks and big pharma. So I've been doing my best to do that, but I am increasingly being shadow banned or taken down, and so are many others. So beware of that, and I will be tagging anything I do in the future with various sources and various channels so that you will know, well, I've been censored from this, but I've been censored, but you can find it somewhere else. So the whole thing can continue. And I think some of these new channels, which aren't owned by the establishment or influenced by the establishment, banks and big pharma and all the rest, you'll be able to follow the facts. And that doesn't mean fact checkers, of course, which are owned by the establishment. So I just thought I'd give you the heads up on that. And thank you for your sponsorship and your support. I thank you for it. Without you and the information that sometimes you people send me, I couldn't continue. Thank you again. As most of you know, my work is very heavily independently research based. And I get my information from all over the world. It would help if you press the subscribe button and the little bell next to it, because the more subscribers I have, the more likely it is that international independent research institutes will share their material with me. It's most helpful, and then of course I automatically share it with you. So surprise, won't cost you anything. Thank you very much.